Good afternoon. My name is Barry Chung, and I'm delighted to perform my final duty as past president to introduce Dr. Andy Horne, our president of the Society of Counseling Psychology. Andy is Dean Emeritus and Distinguished Research Professor at the University of Georgia. He currently serves as advisor to the Greek Schools and Family Program. Andy received his PhD in Counseling and Educational Psychology in 1971 from Southern Illinois University, Carbondale. In a span of 4 decades, he had worked as faculty and administrator at Boston University, Indiana State University, and the University of Georgia, where he recently retired from his position as Dean of the College of Education. Andy specializes in group work, prevention, bullying and violence education, and marriage and family therapy. He's recognized internationally for his outstanding contributions in these areas. Andy's vita is 48 pages long, detailing about 200 publications and numerous presentations internationally. He has received 23 awards and recognitions, and is a fellow of the Association for Specialists in Group Work, Georgia Psychological Association, as well as APA and its 5 divisions. Andy has served as president of APA Division 49 and the Association for Specialists in Group Work prior to becoming president of Division 17. On a more personal level, no need to be scared, Andy. Andy is one of the most down-to-earth, humble, kind, and caring persons I've ever met. He's a special treat for me to serve with him on the executive board and presidential cabinet for the past few years, and I've learned a great deal from him. He has amazing abilities to solicit and integrate input from leaders and members of the association, and to come up with creative solutions. The most important thing is that he cares deeply about people, and his presidential initiatives help move the association forward to create a better world for all. I would also add that Andy deserves a toaster oven for recruiting his own daughter, Sharon Horne, to become a counseling psychologist, and a prominent one also. Andy retired from his UGA position last December, but still works very hard for Division 17. He and his wife Gail enjoy their second home in Oregon, to which I'm still waiting for an invitation for vacation. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my distinct honor to give you our president, Dr. Andy Horne.
It is an honor to be here, a privilege, and I feel very grateful for the opportunity to be here with you. I'm going to use a PowerPoint presentation, not because you will learn much from it, but it's because I do tend to be an attention deficit disordered adult, and I forget what I'm talking about. So I have to turn over there every so often to say, oh yeah, that's what we were talking about. So you can watch it or not, it's up to you. The point is, I'm excited about being here with you. As Barry mentioned, we have a number of themes that are pretty interesting for us, kind of great. And just to be sure that you help us out, pick up magnets when you leave, because we have magnets that you can put on refrigerators or other places telling you about the APA prevention guidelines. And John Romano does not want to take them back through airport security. They search him very, very detailed because of the magnets. So, okay, so let's talk. What's the talk to be about? I asked several past presidents, and they were pretty consistent in the answer. Oh, about 40 minutes. What? I said, yeah, you'll talk about 40 minutes. But about what? I said, anything you want to. I said, you kidding me? I get to talk to some of the best professionals in the world for about 40 minutes about anything I want to talk about? They said, yeah, go for it. So, it's going to be about me. And us as counseling psychologists and a journey that we've taken. It's a shared journey, and I don't have any original insights to share with you today. There are no ahas. You won't leave here saying, wow, I never thought of that, because I don't have anything to say that most of you in the room don't really know. But it will be a story about a journey through our field, counseling psychology, which is rich with a mission to advance the health and well-being of all people, to provide opportunities for positive development, to advance the common weal. We don't use that expression much anymore, but I'm a firm believer that that's what our purpose is to promote the common weal, which today often means promoting a culture of respect and dignity for all people. As counseling psychologists, we're committed to justice. And I want to mention that we've talked about this for a long time, and I've been kind of intrigued with what does this mean, because justice comes in many, many forms. And we have to examine what we mean when we talk about justice. One of the more creative people that I think of in a dean role is Isaac Prilinsky down at University of Miami, and he's identified more than a dozen different aspects of justice, including the one he's talked about most recently, environmental justice, where he talks about if you don't take care of the environment, then you're doing an injustice to all of humanity. And so there is environmental justice. We have other kinds of justice too. And what I want to do, though, is talk a little bit more about me and you and us on a journey, and it's a career journey. In interpersonal justice, that's where we operate at the personal level, and that's at the core of counseling and therapy. We want the people we work with to have justice to themselves interpersonally. It's a mainstay of our work. But we also have procedural justice and social justice. In fact, we have the multiple justices. Now, I've been an APA member since 1973. Those of you who are really pretty sharp, you can figure that's like, oh, that's 40 years. God, he's old. 40 years ago this fall is when I joined Counseling Psychology, Division 17, and I've been proud of that. But before that, I actually was a bit of a normal person for a while, and in fact, at one point I was a student. And as a student, I still remember my introductory session with the president who said, look around you, you heard the talk, look around you, a year from now, 1/3 of the people will be gone. By the time you graduate, 2/3 will be gone, only 1/3 of you will make it through because you're the ones that'll stick with it, and so on and so forth. My God, it's a good thing he's not selling cars or something. Look around, see those cars? 1/3 of them will be gone a year from now. I thought, what a lousy way to introduce people. And so I got very curious about psychology in that process. So I was a student. I come from a family where being a student at a university is not the highlight of our family values. In fact, my grandmother was with me the day I got my letter admitting me, and she broke down just bawling. I said, Granny, what's wrong? What's the matter? She says, no, you'll be a communist and an atheist. You know? So you can see how my family thinks of education. And I was amazed at how on target that old lady could be. And then I became a teacher. And as a teacher, one of the things I learned very quickly was I liked my subject matter. I was English literature. You know, who's not to like English literature? But when you're teaching it in a high school and a middle school, you pretty soon realize this isn't what I thought I was going to be doing. But I like the kids. In fact, I like to listen to kids, and I thought, who could get paid to listen to kids talk? Well, a counselor can. Okay, why don't I become a counselor? So as a counselor in my training, the emphasis was on individual counseling. Remember, this is a long time ago. If you've been a member of APA for 40 years, you were around even before that. So my university supervision focused on understanding how the clients we worked with felt. I remember my supervisor doing the line, tell me how they feel. Tell me, you know, we all know the equation, you feel blank about blank and you'd like to blank. Right? You feel upset about your father and you'd like to, well, that was nice. It was fun. I enjoyed doing that. It was good. But then I would go to the school to work with the kids, and there it was an entirely different process. There it was, as it says here, problem solving, detective work. You got kids with real problems. And you say, you really seem to be upset. Well, hell yes, wouldn't you be? Well, yeah, just an answer like that once can throw you off, And so what I began to do was look for ways to be helpful with the students, but also work toward more of answers on how to be helpful. So I became a student, started studying psychology, and as a psychologist, we'd studied individual work and then began to study group work. Within group work, on my internship, we were all required to run 2 encounter groups. Now, how many of you in here still remember what an encounter group is? Some of you do. And look at the folks over here. It's like, what are they talking about? Encounter groups? My gosh, is that one of those things where they used to go off in the woods and do weird things? Yeah, that's it. Then we talk more and more about group therapy, where, of course, the client is the group, not the individual in the group, but you're dealing with the group system, the group interactions. Then as we move further into other work, doing marriage and family therapy, the system was the entirety of our work that we were doing. So we were focusing on the system, the system, the system. You might be seeing a theme here. So, individual work, group work, marriage and family therapy work, and then more specialty work. Again, if you've been in the field for a long time, 40 years, then you get to, if you're at a university where they encourage continued growth and development, then what happens is you get to continue learning new things. We call those specialty areas, areas in which you go get additional licensure, certification, special training, supervision of your work. So let's throw out some of those. Some that I went through over the 40 years. Drug and alcohol training. Worked in various areas, learning more and more about that. Spent a good bit of time working on parapro training, looking at that versus professional training work in prisons and correctional settings. Did some work in a maximum security federal prison. My daughter still remembers when 2 of the guys, I felt I really had an impact on their lives. And so they came to our house to visit, and she's sitting there and she goes, "Dad, they didn't really do those things, did they?" It's like, yeah, they really did. They were part of the mafia, and they were in the federal prison, and I got to work with them, and they would invite me to Chicago, and they said, "We'll show you Chicago like you'll never see it." I have never contacted those guys again. But working in state juvenile centers, that was an interesting part. Then there was Synanon. Synanon was a kind of fun. Anybody here still remember Synanon? Yeah, some. Okay, got 4 or 5 hands. Okay, don't bother looking it up. Don't even bother looking it up. Transaction analysis. Transaction analysis was huge in the 70s. Eric Byrne and people were going around saying, "I'm okay. Are you okay?" And then we did some Gestalt work, and then we did some reality therapy work. I got to work a good bit with Bill Glasser and learn to do some fun things with him. Did a couple years of working with hypnotherapy. That was a lot of interesting stuff to do. There were other specialties. Went up to Chicago to the Adler Institute to study Adlerian psychology and learn all about birth order and the work that we were doing there. Focused a lot on behavior therapy and rational emotive therapy. We were honored to, I was honored to get to be at the Ellis meeting that we sponsored, Division 17 and Division 49, on Wednesday morning, where we did an honor of Ellis. We've had the dialectical. Look at that. We've got the ABCDs up there. We had narrative. We've had neurolinguistic programming. We've had feminist theory. It goes on and on. In fact, I thought, let me check and see how many we've got today, because you all teach this. You know how many we have. But the bottom line is there is anywhere from 280 to 450 theories that we have that tell us how to work with folks. So there are hundreds more we could talk about, but there's an ever-enlarging theme that keeps coming back. Going from the individuals to the groups, to the systems, to the larger social cultural norms, to the multicultural aspects. And at each level, we reach out further and further to see the extent of the influence we can have on people's lives. All models and treatments, all the interventions have some level of contribution. We know that. They wouldn't be in the books if they didn't work for some people. Some level of effectiveness, some level of efficiency. But Catherine Norsworthy and I went to a conference a few years back. It was a fascinating conference. World Health Organization, Delhi, India. The theme was how do we meet the mental health needs of the 400 million poorest people in the world? I remember being there and thinking, the 400 million poorest people. Just imagine how many counselors we get to train to do that. 400 million. And that's not all the people. I mean, that's not even a billion. So it began to create a challenge to our traditional individual and small group counseling and therapy or approach that we use. Not that it's wrong, but it's a challenge. So I had some nagging questions, and these are questions I'm still wrestling with. I'm not going to go through all of them. I made a list of about 100 questions I still don't have answered, but I'm going to go over one or two with you. There are dozens of them. For example, who is the client? Who is the patient? And is it the individual? Is it the group? Is it the family? Is it the community? Is it society? Who is our client and who are we working with? And how do we know that? For example, let's think back to when I was in my master's and doctoral programs. Apartheid was still alive and well in South Africa. Now, let's assume in an apartheid situation that we look to see what some psychologists were doing in South Africa in the late 60s. There are psychologists who have documented that some of them were working with black people of Africa, teaching them how to manage their anger so that they would not go out and be violent and aggressive. There were psychologists working with white people in Africa, helping them deal with the guilt and grief they had over how they saw people being treated. I remember as a student thinking, why don't you want black people to be angry? Why don't you want white people to feel guilty? I mean, isn't that part of what we're here for? To have people address unjust circumstances. We've also experienced this in the South. I grew up in the South, several of us did. I grew up in the segregated South. We had not integrated our schools when I came along. My first experience of being in a class with a classmate who was a student of color was in my doctoral program. So that was a long time ago. Good thing is we've had a lot to change since then. So who's your client? If we work to follow a traditional model, to some extent are we enablers of the system that is there? Are we helping people manage their guilt and manage their anger, and in the process enabling the system to continue? Well, that's a question many of you have asked, I know. I told you there would be no ahas. Most of you in this room have gone through this and understand. Did I say specialty training and correctional work? Yeah, I did say that. Let me tell you about leaving that focus. There are a number of reasons to do that. One was that I was working at a place called Rockville Training Center, and my daughter said, no, don't ever go back to Rockville Training Center. That's REM sang a song about that. So I said, okay, well, that's a good point. I'll take that into consideration. But the other thing that really influenced me was we were doing some great studies there. We were doing, we'd established a system where we were taking higher rate aggressive adolescents who ranged in age from 13 to 18. And we were working with them to teach social skills, teaching them anger management skills. We were teaching them academic skills. We were actually very successful. We were able to get the kids in that school to develop beautiful examples of internal locus of control. We were able to get them to, in 9 months' time, increase their reading ability by 4 grade levels, their math level by 3 grade levels, all in 9 months. We were very successful. Then one day, one of my smart aleck graduate students asked a question that they should have known not to ask, but they did. What's your follow-up data look like? We didn't have any. So we got busy doing the follow-up data. And what we learned was just what you would predict. The kids went back to the homes they came from. And within the 9 months we had worked with them, 9 months later, almost all of the gains we had made were gone. In fact, by 9 months, 1/3 of them were back in the court system again. That's when I said, I can't do this anymore. I am not going to be working in correctional areas. It's a waste of our resources. It's needed, it's important, but I'm not going to do it. And so I started thinking, where can I work instead? So don't misunderstand, I am not being critical of our historical roots. I am not critical of our present contributions because they're wonderful. But some of us have an interest in looking differently right now at where we're headed and what we're doing. And within counseling psychology, those of you who've studied the history, you know, we have a long, rich history of being developmental, of being prevention-oriented, of being justice-oriented. So, we will never have a sufficient number of therapists to meet the demands of the wealthiest society in the history of the world. That's us, by the way. We are the wealthiest society in the history of the world. And right now, that goes throughout history. No society has ever been richer. We have the wealth in America right now, but it's not being used in a manner that is benefiting a lot of the people. As Albie said, we must recognize the fact that no mass disorder affecting large numbers of human beings has ever been controlled or eliminated by attempts at treating each affected individual or by training enough professionals as interventionists. We will never have enough people to fix the problems that way. So, many of our colleagues here in this room, other places, have taken different directions over the years to see about going in a different way. You all know the story of we'll call them psychologists, it could be doctors, it could be anybody, who go down by the river, they're enjoying the river, and they see some kids going by screaming for help, and they jump in and start saving the kids, do that, and they just keep coming. The kids are still coming down the river. Finally, one walks upstream to see what on earth was going on, and there's a very dangerous place where kids are falling in, and they don't know how to swim, and so he said, look, you guys keep saving them. I'm going to spend time upstream. So in the some of the newer writing and prevention in the medical field right now, they're using the term upstream doctors, saying our upstream doctors are the ones who are saying, I have to get to the cause, not to the swimming lessons. So, okay, so the swim teacher or a lifeguard, a gardener or a mechanic, a number of you have used these expressions many times in the books you've written and edited and published. They're both essential, but much of the hope for change is going to be with the prevention area. Let me sidetrack for a moment. This is, I think, I shouldn't do this, but I like this, so I will. Let's talk about sex. What are the five of the major problems facing the world today? And they're easy to summarize: sex, salt, calories, stress, and aggression. Now, when we talk about sex, it's not exactly sex that we're worried about. I mean, that can be a good thing. But geometrically, we worry about what's happening with reproduction. You realize that the population continues to grow, not arithmetically, but geometrically. Now, I'm not one of those naysayers that's going, oh, the world's coming to an end, we'll never be able to feed all the people. I think we have several choices here. We can take care of it by not feeding everybody. We have mass famine, starvation. It's happened throughout history. Could happen again. We also could do it by just not attending to some of the sanitary and health needs of people and let health conditions deteriorate to the point that we would have mass losses of people. We're really good at a third one, and that's called war. You know, we could always go to war and take care of the population problem. We've done that in the past. Or as logical, reasonable people, we could actually sit down and say this is a solvable problem. We can actually plan for this, and we can figure out what would work to not have mass war, starvation, and illness and disease. We can do that. I know that. So, we won't tackle sex. We can talk about salt. You know, salt's the same thing. That's where our term salary comes from. It's not worth the salt, not worth the salary. We have too much of it. You know, you start hearing the blood pressure issues, the heart disease issues. The calories, I love this one. At our university, we decided we would create an obesity initiative, and I said, an initiative to create obesity? No, not to create it, to stop it. When you say obesity initiative, I got the wrong picture. I thought you were going a different direction. I said, yeah, we're going to have to do things to teach people how to not be obese. Now, I'm talking to a bench scientist. This is one of our honored, distinguished, most senior professors. So what does that mean? He says, well, what that means is people don't know how to take care of themselves. You know, oh, now let me see. If you would go into our building, the College of Education, and walk up and down the halls and ask people, do you know how to lose weight and be healthy? I think 100% of them will answer yes. You eat less, you eat better, and you exercise more. So we know how to handle the problem, don't we? What you are lacking in your program, and Pamela Arpinas and I have been looking at this in some detail, you have to have the psychological component, the work that we can add to this. In other words, we know about stages of change. We know about motivation. We know about how to get people committed to change. And it's not going to come through the bench sciences that they're promoting right now. Well, anyway, that's all a digression. I said it would be. The thing I focus on the most has been the last one, aggression. So I just want to mention a little bit more about aggression. We have, well, about all of these, but we have individual treatments for all 5 of the things that I just mentioned. We can do individual therapy, we can do group therapy, we can do family therapy, we can do social change therapy. But one of the things that we need to be doing is finding ways to get the problems fixed before we need to do the therapy. So, if we talk about aggression, we have some good news and some bad news. So, according to the National Center for Educational Statistics, in 2011, 28% of our middle school kids reported being bullied during the year. 12% of the kids reported being in a physical fight in the last 12 months. 7% reported being threatened or injured with a weapon in the school. Think about it, 7% of all, so let's assume you've got 1,000 kids in school, you've got 70 kids being threatened with a weapon, and that's a worry. Copeland just finished an interesting study this year, an MD, studying 1,400 kids in North Carolina, and he started interviewing them when they were 9 years of age. He followed them up. One of the things he found was of the kids that he worked with starting at 9 years, half of them reported no bullying or victimization. That is really good news that half the kids weren't bullied. About 1/4 of them were victims of bullying, about 7% were the bullies, and about 7% were both the bullies and the victims. So he was curious about the long-term effects. So he's been following them, and what he found was that as adults, victims of bullying were 4 times more likely to be diagnosed with anxiety and panic disorders than non-bullied kids. The bullies had 4 times the risk of developing antisocial personality disorders. Think about that. We're creating in our schools potential future antisocial personality disorders. Well, but those who were both bullied and victimized as students had 14 times the risk of a panic disorder as adults. They had 5 times the risk of depressive disorders, 10 times the risk of suicidal thoughts and behavior. So just imagine the cost of treating this. You can identify it early. Imagine how much it's going to cost to treat it. So we'll never have enough counselors, psychologists to address the problem. Many theories exist for understanding the problem, including the one that I like, the devil made me do it. You know, that was a theory that was around for a while. But the ecological approach is one that we seem to like a lot. That's where we look at the role of the child, the family, the peers, the school, the community, and society to say what are the influences at each of these levels in creating the pathology that we're talking about or in creating healthy kids. Now, we play around with this. This is one of ours. You can read that, I'm sure. Look at it. Even the young folks in the front are straining. All right. Well, on the top, what we've put there, and I don't want you to see it, I just want you to see that what we have been trying to do is identify risk and protective factors related to development of aggression and violence at every stage of people's lives. The child, the individual child, the family, the peers, the school, the community. So we know what a lot of these variables are. Pamela Arpinas has been leading a project, longitudinal examination of aggression study skills, implications for prevention of high school dropouts. I think high school dropouts are pretty important to study. And one of the things that came out of that is that she wanted to understand the different risk and protective factors. From that, she studied teen dating violence, aggression, peers. It's a good study. This is one of more than a dozen that have been done out of the Great Schools and Families Project and the Healthy Teens Project. One of the things that came out of her most recent publication was, if you have kids with low aggression and high study skills, you'll have about a 1.4% dropout rate. If you have kids with high aggression and low study skills, you'll have about a 48% dropout rate. Think of that. We can identify who these kids are. In fact, we've been following kids now from the time they were in 6th grade till they're now out of high school, several hundred of them, and we have such accurate predictors of who's going to be in what type of situation. One of the groups, one of the outcomes we had that was fascinating was when I announced I was stopping some of the work we were doing, our chief of police said, I don't want you to stop. I said, what? I said, I don't want you to stop. I said, why? Why not? I said, the work you've been doing, we have significantly reduced, and it's not me, it's the project. You have significantly reduced the dropout rate in our community by almost half. We've cut the dropout rate by almost half. He said, do you realize those kids who are in school are not on the streets stealing, vandalizing, doing the drugs? They're in school. Don't stop. We got to keep these kids in school. So we know that what we're doing is having some impact. As we talk about these programs, we look at universal programs. This is like everybody getting fluoride in the water. It's a good thing for everybody to get. Then we have some targeted programs, and those have been some of the programs that we've developed. A number of the people here in this room have been working on targeted programs to help specific groups prevent the violence and aggression that could be in their lives if no help comes their way. A few students will need some intensive interventions, and that's where our counseling still is going to be critical. We've got to provide that. Some will need some early intervention, and all students could benefit from a safe and welcoming environment. So we created a program called the Safe and Welcoming Schools Program. Barry mentioned I'm still associated with the program, and this is the one that we're doing now. And what we're attempting to do is move away from the focus of pathology that we had with the violence reduction and the bullying reduction and say, come on folks, what makes kids do well? Let's stop talking about the pathology side and let's talk about the healthy side. So that's what we're doing. We've formed an interdisciplinary faculty from education, counseling, psychology, public health, social work, and law. We're working as a great team. It is so nice to see that lawyers really can be helpful. They're not always a pain in the neck. Some of them can actually care about kids and help us. Another study that's been presented several times here, I don't know, that Dorothy Espelage is able to just take a horse and ride it in every race she gets to, but no. The Second Step program that she's been reporting on here has just been phenomenal. It's a program many of you are familiar with. It's been around for a number of years, but she's been doing a random clinical trial of it for the last couple of years. And one of the things that she's finding is that students from intervention schools are 42% less likely to self-report perpetration or physical aggression. Latest thing she just said, she didn't have a slide for you. I mean, we were just talking last night, and she said, and sexual harassment's going down. That's the interesting thing, is that it's carrying over to sexual harassment issues too. That's good news. So, in the last 20 years, let's talk about some of the good news. In the last 20 years, we've experienced significant reductions in aggression and violence. Now, a lot of people don't know that because they go, well, geez, all you got to do is read the papers and you see that the world's going to hell. Actually, we're doing some good work here. In this room, in this division, we have a number of folks who have made it a point to be impactful. Let's take a look at this slide. This is the trend in violent victimization at school this last year, and you can look at from 1992 to 2010. Look at that. Isn't that amazing? This is from the Department of Justice, that the school violence has been dropping regularly for about, almost 20 years. We have good news. By the way, when did we start introducing a lot of these violence prevention programs? Oh, it's about 20 years ago, Take a look at this one. Can't tell the difference, but it is different. This is the trend in theft victimization at school in the past year. Theft is going down. Let's take a look at this one. This is fighting on school property. Look at that, 26% decline. We have good things happening, folks. It's not happening, though, because we've got more counselors taking kids in to do individual work. It's happening more and more because schools are developing prevention and intervention systems. We're also seeing, this is the newest news, the CDC reports that the youth homicide rate just reached its 30-year low in 2010. We just hit the lowest record of youth homicide that has occurred since CDC has been keeping the records. But 4,800 youth were still victims of homicide in 2010. And they continue to be the worst with people who have access to handguns. That's an epidemic. So what do you do with an epidemic? You do an epidemiological approach. You begin to treat the problem like an infectious disease. What you begin to do is say, where is it starting? Where is it spreading? How do we stop it? And the good news is that we have people like Gary Slechton has a program going where his project really is focused to be an epidemiological intervention as opposed to a punishment intervention. So he trained violence interrupters to work in the schools and the communities. Take a look at this stat. 363 days without a shooting or a killing in East New York, Brooklyn. That is pretty good because before that, they were having shootings almost on a weekly rate. Imagine going a year with no shootings. Watch his TED Talk. It's a great TED Talk. When we think about where we are and where we need to be going, don't bother trying to read the whole thing, but I want you to look at the lower quadrant, lower left quadrant. Much of our efforts are spent on individual interventions where we do crisis work, therapy work, medication, symptom containment, and case management. That's all good. It has to be done, and we need to do more of it. But then let's jump to the upper right quadrant where we have community development, affordable housing, we have recreational possibilities, high-quality schools, and access to health services. We can do that. We can do that. It is possible to happen. Now, I believe we're going to experience in the next 20 years massive unemployment on a scale that we've not seen for a long, long time. Maybe on a scale we haven't ever seen. And I give the two examples of that. The more senior people here remember deciding to go to APA. They would go to a travel agent. They would meet. They would buy a paper ticket. They would then go to an airport. They would talk to a nice person who would take your paper ticket, talk to you about your seating assignment and stuff, and then you would leave your bag with them, and then you would fly. Anybody still work with a travel agent, getting a paper ticket and show up to a live person at the desk? Those were so 20 years ago. Well, the thing that's fascinating to me now is the Google car, and John Dagley says, "You're making this up, aren't you? And this kind of thing, you had one too many Jack Daniels, and you made this one up, didn't you?" But actually, Google has been experimenting with this for 3 years, and I don't know if you followed this at all, but they have a car in Southern California that's now traveled for 3 years, over 300,000 miles. It's not gotten a speeding ticket, it's not been in a single wreck, there have been no violations, and it has no driver. So Google experiments and plays around some. They have no driver, big deal. What's the implication? How many of you, since you've been at this convention, have been paying to ride in a taxi? Any of you riding a Google car? Every one of you had a driver. Imagine New York City suddenly not needing taxi drivers. Because what they do with the Google car is they say, "I want to go to the Marriott." They get in, they put their credit card in, and it takes them to the Marriott with no driver. Take that a step further. I have a brother, long-distance truck driver. Imagine if you back the truck up to the dock and load it and punch in the formula and the truck takes off by itself. You don't need truck drivers. That's just one example of some of the dramatic technological changes coming our way. I think the result is going to be some massive unemployment, and this will be for people who will not be qualified to be going to Google and write code for the newest computer programs. These will be people who will be unemployed. And as we think about that, that's where, look at our background, vocational, career. Do we know anything about this? We know a lot. So we know about the health initiatives. The Affordable Care Act has built in prevention as a major component. They haven't spelled out how it's going to operate yet, but that is to our benefit. Our goal is to be promoting healthy living. It's a mission of our society, and many of us have contributed, and I thank you for doing that. A couple of examples. Pamela did the bully prevention book. Maureen Kinney, let's see, Pamela. We have Roy Reese, the Realizing Social Justice. Oh, look at that. That's a nice one that just got exposed right here at this convention. I hope you'll pick up multiple copies. So, Bob Canine, thank you. Great work. The point is, we have a lot of good things going on, including right here at this convention. We had the promotion of nonviolence in counseling psychology, which was presented by Annalise Singh and Larry Gerstein. We have the best prevention practices by Sally Hagee and John Romano. We have the Journal of Prevention and Health Promotion that was discussed in some detail here by Jonathan Schwartz and Sally Hagee. We had the Promoting Training and Professional Development in Prevention Practice and Science, Revisiting the Boulder Model, Roy Reese and Leon Caldwell. We had the Division 17 student poster sessions. We have Prevention in School Settings, shared by Maureen Kinney. It was a great presentation. And we have the Innovative Approaches to Prevention of Violence Across the Lifespan. We have Global Applications of Prevention Psychology, how groups can be preventive. That session just went on a couple hours ago. We have Couples and Family Intervention and Counseling Psychology, Prevention in Diverse Cultural Contexts. We're advocates for change, but usually change for other people. An example, look at the dearth of prevention practice preparation within our academic programs. Preparation for therapeutic prevention work practice requires the same level of intensity of preparation as does therapy practice. Few places provide that. I hope we're moving to change that. We do have some exceptions. And our work, we've made great progress, and yet, as the recent news has informed us, we have examples, the most poignant being the Trayvon Martin tragedy and the Sandy Hook massacre. We have such a long, long distance to go. Our Society of Counseling Psychology is an outstanding professional group to lead in this mission. We must work for justice for all in this. I want to thank you for your professional commitment and engagement in what we've been doing. I thank you for the research, the teaching, the training, the service that has happened. I thank you for the past contributors. We have a rich, rich history in our society of outstanding people who have led the way for us. And we have people who are just so exciting to see their work today and to see the promise they have coming in the future. So to all present, past, and future, I say thank you for your previous professional contributions that have made counseling psychology great for the future, great and for the future commitments that will lead us forward. It's been an honor to be among your membership. I do want to remind us, though, that we need to celebrate our accomplishments, take joy in the contributions that have been made by our society, take care of yourselves, take care of our colleagues. Our students and colleagues are so critical. And I want us to marvel at the accomplishments that have been made. We have much to be proud of. I extend my thanks and appreciation to all members, friends, family, who have contributed to the leadership and efforts of our society during the past year. You're too numerous to mention. I'm not going to try. But do know how grateful and thankful I am, how appreciative I am to have been able to be with you this year. Finishing off the year with the expression, "It takes a village," certainly applies here. Thanks to Division 17, the entire Division 17 leadership team, the executive board and the cabinet, Barry, Tanya, Michael, Tody, past presidents. You've been so wonderful and supportive, telling me, take about 40 minutes, talk about anything you want to. That's good advice. Thanks to the administrative team, Debbie, Nolan, Greg Brooks. Thanks to the students. You're our future, and we're so proud of you. One final recognition to Gail. and my family with love. Thanks for being on the journey with me. So, let's get to work. It's time for a business meeting. Mahalo.